It's good afternoon where I am, here in Mallorca. Good afternoon to you, Richie Pryor from Kicking the Balearics. My normal cohort, Mr. Makepeace, is over in Ibiza. Afternoon, Mark.
Good afternoon, Richie.
But we'd really like to welcome... It's actually, if I'm right in saying, it's probably our first guest on a Kicking the Balearics. We'd like to welcome Alex Fitzpatrick. Alex runs... well, I'll let you tell everybody what you do, Alex, rather than me get it wrong.
Yeah, running a twice weekly podcast on Real Mallorca. It's called Tornerem. You can hear it through any of your major podcast providers. If you search Real Mallorca, it will come up there, Tornerem, and just basically covering all the games, any of the news from the club, any of the news from the island around the club, and really cutting through the official club line and trying to kind of... look at the story behind the story, because information that's out there for English-speaking fans of Mallorca is very much official club line, and I just thought that there was a need really for something a little bit more, so they weren't just getting the PR spin, that they were kind of hearing the rest of it as well.
Good stuff. And you say it comes out twice a week?
Yeah, twice a week. So it's normally a Monday morning and a Thursday. So yeah, if you go on your podcast provider, you'll find it. If you search Real Mallorca, hit subscribe and it'll pop up on your mobile phone or whatever you listen to your podcast on every single week, or twice a week, in fact.
Now, you've also done a little bit of work for La Liga TV, haven't you, Alex? You earlier on, particularly you were at the Real Mallorca Real Madrid game when we managed to beat victoriously Los Blancos by 1-0.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, dream come true. That gig last year was working for La Liga TV, covering every Real Mallorca game on the island, and a couple off the island as well. I had the privilege to be pitch side at the Camp Nou to see Real Mallorca get, unfortunately, beaten 5-2 on the night where Leo Messi scored a hat-trick and also was presented on the pitch with his Ballon d'Or. So generally speaking, after every single game last season was interviewing the players, and for the big games, Real Madrid at home, as you just mentioned, Richie, doing live TV as well, pitch side.
Fab. So let's just go back. Let's go back to promotion. Promotion was, one of the best nights of football I've ever probably been to. I'm a big Arsenal fan, but that Real Mallorca game against Deportivo La Coruña, you're never ever, I don't think, going to get, excitement and the actual, the jeopardy after being 2-0 down and thinking, I don't think we're going to do this. It'll be a great night, but we're not going to do this. And it was just an unbelievable night, wasn't it? Yeah,
I mean, you summed it up perfectly there. There was probably not any expectation going into the game. Losing the first leg 2-0, Mallorca had to win 3-0 to go through, and it just didn't really see it coming. But it was on one of those hot summer nights, football going on long into the summer in the Segunda and in the Segunda Bay, of course. So the weather was fantastic. It was a bank holiday weekend as well, so there was a fiesta. Everybody had the next day off, and there was just a packed crowd. The fans lined the streets outside Somos to welcome the crowd. I mean, the red flares going all the way down to the next roundabout and beyond. And the atmosphere was just unbelievable. The club have brought out a documentary about it called The Perfect Plan. And it's just, if anyone hasn't watched it, it's great. Really, really well shot, really well done. It's been translated into English as well. You've got to go and watch it because it's just fantastic. And the atmosphere around the game was just unreal.
I think we all probably thought that we maybe have gone up a season too early. It was, we snuck into the playoffs right at the end of the season. We were probably a little bit undercooked in the way that the squad was. We didn't really invest too much in the squad, because we didn't have a lot of time, of course, because it was so late once we got promoted and then going into the new season. And it was a bit of a struggle. We had some ups, probably a lot more downs than ups, obviously, because we got relegated. But up until the point of lockdown, I think we still had a bit of a sneak. We could have got out, but after the lockdown, I do think the players reacted really well to the crowd. And when we didn't have the crowd there, I think we were lost.
Yeah, I agree. The depth of the squad as well was a bit of an issue. Vicente Moreno wasn't happy with the squad that he had. He wanted more experienced players. He wanted more players of a decent quality. And the recruitment in the summer was not particularly good. They did pick up actually a couple of players who they then loaned out and weren't involved last year, one of which is an absolute revelation or two of which actually been a revelation for Mallorca this year, Antonio Sanchez and Luis de Galarreta, which I guess we'll probably talk about a little bit later on. And they plied their trade in the Segunda last season. So some good business was done. But the way that Vicente Moreno really saw the squad is he saw that he had 12, 13, 14 players, and almost every single game he was playing the same 11, give or take one player here or there. And what actually happened was, when the lockdown came, we started to have games every 72 hours, or in Mallorca's case, they got the bum end of the deal, and sometimes less than every 72 hours. And you just cannot maintain a stable starting lineup with 11, 12, 13 players when you're playing every 72 hours. It's just unsustainable. They also had, let's look at the other side of the coin. A little bit of it was about that, but they had some difficult games after lockdown finished. They had Barcelona at home. They had Villarreal, who were pushing in the end for a top 4 spot. They had Real Madrid. They had Athletic Club, who were also pushing for Europe away from home at San Mamés. Difficult game. They had Atletico Madrid away at the Wanda, and Sevilla away as well. So they had some tough fixtures there. And I think you have to probably say that Mallorca had stuck in that relegation battle throughout the season, picking up points and chipping away here and there. But up until lockdown, it was a pretty low scoring in terms of points division at the bottom end. And one of the reasons that Mallorca was still in it is because other teams weren't picking up points. They went long periods without getting a result, and you just can't continue to do that. You've got to take it into your own hands, win games, get results, and not rely on others. And they did rely for long periods of the season last year on others.
Alex, remember when you beat? Was it Celta? Wasn't it 5-1 at the end of the back end? Wasn't it? Was there a massive change in kind of mood in the camp there? Because really, that was the first time that Mallorca could actually scrape through, wasn't it? So, did you notice a difference, or was it just a one-off?
Well, I think it was back in Mallorca's hand at that point. As I said a minute ago, the couple of games after the lockdown before that, they'd had games that you probably on paper look at and go, they're not taking anything from these games. Celta was the one where they knew they had to win it. It was a 6-pointer against a relegation rival. As you said, they tonked them 5-1. Little bit of luck along the way with, I think Oscar Garcia, the manager at the time, who's since been sacked, was very unhappy about the penalty that Mallorca had for the first goal. But yeah, belief came, and everything that they hit turned to gold on that particular night, a 5-1 victory. They then unfortunately had to follow it up with an away game at the Wanda to Atletico Madrid. So it's difficult for Mallorca, or it was last season, to gain any sort of momentum because of the teams they were coming up against. They then followed it up with a victory over Levante, which really started to make people think, we can do this. But then again, they had to follow that up with an away game to Sevilla, right up at the top end, qualifying for the Champions League. And they were combative. They were a little bit unlucky. Manolo Reina managed to save a penalty in the first half that was correctly retaken. And they then scored from that, Sevilla, and went on and won. The crunch game really was the Granada one.
And they couldn't lose that one, Alex, could you?
No, couldn't.
Granada, you couldn't lose it, and you did, didn't you?
No, but in the context of, people look at that name Granada and they see that they were promoted automatically in the same season that Mallorca went up, and they're going, okay, well, this is a team maybe that Mallorca should be beating here. But if we look at what they achieved, Granada, last season, they made it into Europe, and they're now playing in the Europa League, and they are punching well above their weight. They have a terrific young manager there. He turned 40 the other day, and Mallorca had their chances in that game as well, and I don't think the luck went with them in that game. But when you start to talk about luck, and you get to the point where it's a must-win game with 2 matches remaining, you have to say,
can't rely on luck, Alex, can you? That's the thing.
Table never lies.
The table doesn't lie, does it? The table doesn't lie.
No. The table doesn't lie, and Mallorca at that point were needing a lot of results to go their way. Certain teams to win, certain teams to lose, and actually they didn't even finish third from bottom in the end. Leganés finished in that position, and they were the ones who ran it close with Celta Vigo on the final day. In fact, in the final seconds when they missed a golden opportunity right in front of goal to win the game. So it was a valiant attempt, I would say, for Mallorca to stay up with some tight resources. But if I was to sum it up, I would say they did well to stay in it that long through the season. The recruitment wasn't probably good enough. But I think also the manager could have tried something different. I think he spent far too long banging the same drum. And during his tenure, whenever he was in charge at Mallorca at the professional level, not Segunda B, the away record was just abysmal. And with a very similar set of players, for the away record now under Luis Garcia Plaza to be the best in the Segunda, and for Mallorca to be top of the table on the back of that, you have to say that there are some question marks over Vicente Moreno when he's coaching. And
also defensively, because don't forget, Mallorca conceded the most goals, 65 goals they conceded in that league. And we've now conceded 4 with pretty much, I mean, I know he's changed it around a bit and he likes to swap the players around, but you'd say obviously Manolo and then still in goal. He normally goes with Valiente and Raillo in the centre of defence, and then he mucks about a little bit with the fullbacks. But more or less, that defence is the same defence that we had. And we've conceded from 65 down to 4. Now you can obviously say that it's a different league and the strength of the league is less, but that's a huge difference, isn't it?
Well, I think to be fair to Vicente Moreno, I will throw him a little bone on this one, because he was very unlucky with left back in La Liga. The left back position was one where I think they had Baba Rahman. He played, he got injured, he was out for a period of time. They had I forget the Lumor playing at left back, and he was just a disaster. Came in on loan from Sporting in Portugal, and he was just a disaster at left back. He just was not up to the job of playing in the top 5 league at the left back position. But he was left with no choice, Vicente Moreno. It was that or play Juan Sastre or Gamez at left back, which he did at times. They even tried to rectify it in the Christmas market. They brought in Coutris. He played 1 game, set up a goal, looked great. They went away to Real Betis. He gave away a penalty and in the process of doing so, injured himself, did his cruciate knee ligament, and that was it. He was out for the season. So there was a little bit of bad luck there for Vicente Moreno, I would say, in the left-back position. But ultimately, taking left-back out of it, he had the same players at his disposal that Luis Garcia Plaza has. Now, the mentality and the way that the two teams play, Vicente Moreno's compared to Luis Garcia Plaza's are chalk and cheese. You know, they're chalk and cheese. It's a similar set of players, but it's chalk and cheese in terms of one. Vicente Moreno wanted to play quite open. He wanted to out-football some of these experienced La Liga teams who have a much bigger wage budget and players who have millions and millions of euros in value, with players who were playing 2 seasons before in Segunda B, which to me was naive. You know, Vicente Moreno himself is a young coach as well, so very naive from.
Was he trying to make his mark with the big boys then, Alex? Was that the problem with Moreno? Was he too gung-ho, where we see that sometimes the anti-football is what wins the day, especially with promoted teams. What was Moreno's mindset about that?
I think there's a middle ground. I think if you had a continuum, you've got kind of down one end, you've got Bordalas at Getafe, who is anti-football, who plays 2 left backs on the left, who plays 2 right backs on the right. You know, he doesn't have wingers. He plays defenders in those positions. They kick, they cheat, they time waste, they dive, they do everything that they can to win the game. They play it long. You know, very un-Spanish way of doing it. But actually, in Spain, it's quite a successful model. It's actually the Granada model. That's Granada we talked about a little bit earlier. That's how Granada got promoted out of the Segunda. So that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum, I think, is Vicente Moreno trying to play open football. He was playing with 3 forwards, Ante Budimir, Cucho Hernandez and Take Kubo towards the end of the season. 3 really attacking players. He had Idrisu Baba in midfield, Dani Rodriguez playing just behind those front 3 as well, and then Salva Sevilla, who unbelievable magician with a football, but not someone who's going to dig in and do the dirty work. And then when you look at it and you go, okay, well, he wants his fullbacks to fly forwards. He's got Fran Gamez is about 5'10", you know, and at left back they had Lumor, who just wasn't up to it. There just was not a structure there in that side that was set up to do it. I'd say Luis Garcia Plaza is more somewhere in the middle. He he's pragmatic at times, but he certainly isn't anti-football. He certainly wants his side to play football, but he's not going to allow his team to make it easy for the opposition. And far too often last season in La Liga, Mallorca were so easy to play against. And you look at some of the goals that they gave away, some of the soft penalties that they gave away. I think they were well into the double figures for giving penalties away last season. It just, for me, it boils down to mentality.
So if you wanted to say, because as Richie pointed out there, did you say 65 goals against last season, was it, Richie?
Yeah.
I mean, so 4 goals against this season. I mean, it's almost a complete turnaround, isn't it? Is it just about mentality, or has he got better performances out of lesser players?
I think he's coached them. You can look at the Vicente Moreno's side last year, and that's not to say that Vicente Moreno wasn't coaching them, but I think Vicente Moreno was coaching them in other ways going forwards. The number of goals that Mallorca conceded from set pieces, the number of goals that Mallorca conceded on counter-attacks, you have to look at the same goals being conceded over and over again and go, well, what are they doing on the training ground? Are they actually giving them any coaching? And what were Mallorca's biggest weaknesses last season are now Mallorca's biggest strengths. And and with a very similar set of players. And that is down to one thing and one thing only, and that is high quality coaching.
So is this the coach that Richie didn't want, Alex? Is that right?
I can't throw him under a bus because I have to say, like many Mallorca fans, I was pretty kind of unimpressed at the time with him. I mean, the guy's got a really good track record in terms of Spain. He got Levante promoted in a similar way to which he's getting Mallorca promoted, apart from it was in his second season that he got Levante promoted. Lots of 1-0 victories, and I think they either won it or finished second in the division. They went up automatically. He then kept them in the Liga. He then moved on to Getafe, and he kept them in La Liga and got them pushing up near the top of the table. But this was kind of 10 years ago. Yeah. And that was the concern of a lot of Mallorca fans, because he'd been on a little bit of a globe-trotting world tour to the Far East, the Middle East, and places where I think he was going to make a decent coin. And other cultural reasons, I'm sure, which he has talked about in his press conferences this season. But he came back for, I think it was about an 11-game spell with Villarreal. Interestingly enough, the guy who appointed him at Villarreal, the director of football there, Pablo Ortels, is now the director of football at Mallorca. Yeah. So I think on our podcast, one of my guests equated it to like getting back with your ex. But he clearly saw something in him that he liked, and now Mallorca fans can see what that is.
But am I right in saying that Villarreal did win a game in those 11 games?
He didn't win a league game. He won, I think they were playing in either the Champions League or I think it was the Europa at the time, and they won one of those. But yeah, he drew a number of games and lost a number of games. But yeah, he didn't win a league game. Wasn't particularly given a lot of time, I think it is probably fair to say. And I think you also have to look at it and say the owners at Villarreal are not the most stable of owners in the world. They've their last manager before the Arsenal manager that you'll know very well, Richie, who's Emery, isn't it? Who's there now, doing a fantastic job for them, to be fair. Now in La Liga, but the manager that they had previously, whose name escapes me at the moment, they had him in charge. They sacked him. They brought a manager in, and then they realised, oh dear, this wasn't the best thing we could have done. They sacked that manager and brought the old manager back in. So, and then this Villarreal were very close to qualifying for the Champions League, qualified for the Europa League last season, and they took him out and brought Emery in. So, there's question marks over whether or not the owners there are the most stable owners in the world.
Guys, are you concerned? Because obviously, I mean, all joking aside, Richie, we on our Zoomcast, we were very underwhelmed, weren't we, with Garcia when he came in, because we thought it might be a bigger name. Are you now concerned, guys, that he's showing his worth again and he's going to be off a la Moreno at the end of last season? Yeah, because I think Moreno wanted to leave unsettled the last 3 or 4 games of the season. Any sniffs that Moreno might get cherry picked by someone else, or is he there for the long or the short term?
You mean Platha would get? I don't think so. I mean, I
just think that as Alex says, the merry-go-round of Spanish managerial football is, the turnover is so high. But, where do you go for a top manager nowadays? You look at, if you can't get one from La Liga, you look at the top of Segunda, don't you? And as we've identified, 4 goals, he's getting the best out of his team that Moreno couldn't. Is he primed to be picked off by one of the big boys?
Only if we didn't get promoted, I would imagine. That would be the only maybe reason. If he gets them promoted, I would imagine he'd like to stay there and take them into that division. He had that, as Alex said, with Levante. He did the same with them, and I think he would take that team. Because as Alex has said, he's coached this team. This team I think we forget we lost the first game 1-0. Was it Rayo Vallecano? I think it was.
Yeah. And drew the second. It was 1 point from 6, mate, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, Espanyol, but that was the difference. It was Espanyol, and everybody had, if you'd have got beat by Espanyol, you'd have gone, oh, hang on a minute. Do you know what I mean? But it was a 0-0 with Espanyol, which was obviously the old coach. And he's obviously, as Alex has said, he has done something to this team. He's coached them, obviously. He's done something completely different to what Moreno has done. So I imagine he's going to want to take that set of, and go and show people in La Liga. I think we all know he's going to have to strengthen. They're going to have to spend some money. We are missing, I think, a decent striker. We have started scoring goals. We all sort of wondered, I was upset that Budimir went, it's a normal thing for it's a bit of a Riyad Mahrez thing. I'm not playing until, I get my transfer, like he did for Leicester and for City, which upset me. I hate that sort of thing. I was wondering why they let Stoichkov go, as I thought it was a bit, he had scored goals, albeit, from not such a great side, and a lot were penalties. So I still think we need a striker, although Abdon has come on in the last 3 or 4 games, but I think we're probably all honest to say that Abdon isn't a La Liga striker. If we go up, Abdon isn't a La Liga striker. We're going to have to find a number 9 that's going to stick 20 goals in a season. Otherwise, we're going to be in the same pot as we were when we went up. I don't know what Alex feels about that.
I actually think, Richie, that we won't have to wait till La Liga to see that player, that there'll be a purchase that happens in January. The American owners have really invested in the club. I think just after the close of the transfer window, they pumped another 8 million euros into the club in order to reduce the debt down. I think they've reduced the debt from around about 50 million to around about 10 million now. So the club is on a really stable financial footing, and I think they will go out, as they did with Budimir. Budimir actually came in the winter market of the promotion season. Yeah. And I think... Alex? Who would I like? Well, who would I like, and who will Mallorca get? Certainly not going to be the same thing. But I mean, what they said.
We're only 3 weeks away from January, aren't we? So I mean, it's around the corner. I mean, no one knows La Liga Segunda like you. Well, maybe Richie Pryor on a bad day, but those like you. Who have you identified out there who could really do the business? Because I agree with Richie. If you don't invest and you don't get stronger, then are you not just going to bounce back down again, or go back down and bounce around? You really need to make a purchase and a show of strength, no?
I think what Mallorca will do is that there are some obvious candidates out there. You kind of look at who doesn't get promoted, someone like Stuani at Girona, and you go, well, we'll go and take him. But I mean, he's 30, 34, 35, maybe. He's coming to the end of his time, really. Although I would take him for a season, by the way, in La Liga for sure, on a loan or whatever. Yeah, but I don't think Girona are strapped for cash. But I think what you're more likely to see with Mallorca is they won't go out there and overspend on a player that's known necessarily at the top end of the Segunda in the Spanish game. I think actually what they'll do is they'll put Pablo Ortiz out to work, and they will find a hidden gem in the same way. It wasn't Pablo Ortiz that found him, but in the same way that they got Ante Budimir, someone who's been bouncing around in the second tier of different countries, and he was a bit of a journeyman when he came to Mallorca, and it just fitted nicely and it just worked. And I think they will look to bring someone like that in potentially in January, and then we'll see what happens in the summer. If Mallorca manage to go up, maybe there'll be a cash injection and they'll decide to spend, but a lot will depend on what happens with the coronavirus situation, because of obviously the revenue of the club is severely affected by that. If we can get fans back in the ground this season, then that's going to obviously put a few quid in the back pocket for the owners. But I don't see them going out and spending a particularly huge transfer fee, you know, a couple of million here, a couple of million there. And what they've tried to do, there was a lot of criticism last year about the transfer business that they did and about the money that they spent. But we have to remember that the money that they could spend, their hands were tied in terms of the budget that they're allocated by La Liga, and they had the lowest budget in the whole of La Liga. So they spent what they could spend, but what they did was they prioritised getting players who were going to improve them this year. A number of them haven't paid off. A number of them have left the club, but there are one or two who have remained. So I think what Mallorca will do is they will bring in players with a long-term view. They won't go out and spend 5 million euros on a 20, well, like we were talking about Stuani, a 35-year-old striker. They won't do that. They'd rather buy somebody with value who can come in, and if they hit the ground running in La Liga, they can sell on, like they have, or like they will with Ante Budimir for probably around about 4 or 5 times what they bought him for originally. So whoever they bring in, Martin, it's not going to be anyone who we've ever heard of.
Do you think Moreno knows exactly what he's looking for, Alex?
Moreno or Luis Garcia Plata?
Oh, excuse me, sorry. Garcia, do you think Garcia knows exactly? You know, we're kind of talking the guy up. Do you think he knows exactly what he's looking for and he's just waiting for the right man to come?
In terms of a striker,
yeah, exactly. Because as Richie said, I think the defence is phenomenal. I think now it's all about getting the goals that are going to get you promotion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's going to be working. He won't do any of the identifying of players, really. It'll be Pablo Ortiz that does that. And then what Pablo Ortiz did say, which is totally different way of working from how Maheta Malongo and Javier Recio used to work. I mean, there was a bit of a dispute between Vicente Moreno when he was coach and those two names that I just mentioned, because they were just providing players which Vicente Moreno had no say in, and we see what has happened to the majority of those players. They barely pulled on a shirt for Mallorca. So I think you know it will be Pablo Ortiz, not Luis Garcia Plata, who identifies the player, but they will, and they have said that they will be working together on that. And the style of player is going to be important, because Mallorca don't really have a kind of player in the mould of an Ante Budimir. Alex Alegria can't play that target man role. Abdon Prats is on an absolute hot streak at the moment. It won't continue for much longer, and he doesn't play that Ante Budimir role where he's a target man that they can play the ball into and they can play off and get people up and around him. So I think in terms of style of player, Martin, that's what they'll be looking for.
I think also that, I think we all agree that strikers because is what they need, but the way it is right now with the rotation that he does, because he doesn't play the same team. I mean, you did this competition, didn't you, last week on your I think it was part of your podcast, that you try and pick a team and you're going to yourself, well, he changes 4 or 5 every week. He never plays the same team, which I don't think is a bad thing. But what it does show is strength of squad, of course. The only place that you look at and you go, yeah, if they had that boy in there that was doing 20 goals a season, we'd be laughing. Do you know what I mean? I mean, look, we're only 4 goals off, I think, Espanyol, who top goal scorers. We're second top goal scorers. We've scored 24 goals in, 17, 18 games, which isn't great. It's not a great return. But the league is well known for not having a lot of goals scored. It's well known for a lot of draws because of how tight and how sort of quite close together the teams are. So if we could find that boy that sticks away, between 10 and 15 probably, because obviously we're halfway through the season, at the end of the season. Oliver Giroud will do all right, looking for a game. Yeah, he'll do. I'll be happy with him. I
don't think you can afford him, boys. Not on that wages.
Or maybe he'll come for the island life, maybe.
Yeah, there you go, you see. Well, yeah, if we can get back to some island life, it would be lovely. Yeah, but I think that's where we are. I think everywhere else is looking pretty good. So going forward, Alex, I mean, we're pretty much halfway through the season. We're coming up to Christmas. I think we're all pleased. Obviously, well, we can't not be pleased. You know what I mean? Where we are, we're top of the league. We've lost 1 game. We only conceded 4 goals. We're second top goal scorers. We can only look forward, can't we, to better things in the new year, hopefully?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, what I would say is there's going to be a 2-week break over Christmas. I think they restart on the weekend just after New Year, which is a little bit unusual for Spain, but it's a concertinaed season this season, isn't it? With the late start and that sort of thing. I think the challenge for Luis Garcia Plata is going to be the team are in such a rhythm of playing well and winning that it's going to be a challenge for him after a 2-week break to get them back to that. You know, it's been absolutely incessant in terms of the games. It's been Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday, or you know, slight variation on that. And I think there's only been 3 or 4 midweeks since the beginning of the season without a game. So it's going to be a challenge to see whether or not they can get themselves up and running. In the second half of the season, the key things that I think are going in Mallorca's favour are there's funds there to buy. There's funds there to buy if they want to buy that centre forward that we talked about. I look at Espanyol and I say, well, they can't really buy anyone any better than RDT up top. They've got an embarrassment of riches already. So I don't see them improving a great deal. And not that there's a lot of room for improvement with the number of points that the teams have got up there. Mm-hmm. But the huge thing for Real Mallorca is this. They have played everybody in that top 6. They have played Espanyol away from home. They've played Almeria away from home. Let's face it, those two are going to be the contenders for the top 2 positions along with Mallorca. They've played those sides away from home. They've beaten Almeria. They've drawn 0-0 away at Espanyol. And in Spain, it's not goal difference. It's the goal average, as they call it, of course. It's basically the head-to-head between the 2 sides. And Mallorca have the upper hand against the 2 teams who are vying for those top 2 promotion spots already and have played them both away from home. There's a small glimmer of hope, and it is a very small glimmer of hope looking at the news today, that the coronavirus situation could at some point improve to the stage where Segunda has got some fans in the ground. And if that does happen and Mallorca can face those 2 massive promotion games against those 2 rivals with fans in the ground, that is going to make a huge difference to their success for sure.
That's true. Fantastic. Listen, it's been a great chat. I've really enjoyed it. Went on a little bit more than we thought, but you know, if it's good chat, it's great chat, and it's interesting, I'm sure. Alex, just remind everybody of your podcast and when it comes out.
Yeah, it's a bi-weekly podcast all about Real Mallorca. Comes out on a Monday and on a Thursday, and it's called Tornarem, Tornarem. If you just search Real Mallorca in any of your podcast providers, iTunes, whatever it is that you use, Spotify, it's on there, and it should come up there.
And people can find you on, obviously, on all the social media as well. What's your handle on all the social media?
Yeah, I cover Real Mallorca on Twitter, so that's and Spanish football in general, but mainly focused on Real Mallorca. It's at Mallorca Alex 100.
Fantastic, Alex. It's been really a pleasure having you with us today. You've obviously got so much more knowledge than me, so that's great. We might have you on every week.
Can we do this again, please? Can we do one just before the last 5 or 6 games when it gets really interesting? Because I've got a feeling Alex's temperature might be a bit higher then.
We'll have won it by then, Mike.
I'm about to say we'll be done by then, Mark. We'll be done by then.
I like your positive thinking, boys. Really enjoyed that, Alex. Thank you very much, mate.
Yeah,
no problem.
This will come out as a video cast, as you know, as on our site. The video Kick of the Balearics. We'll put it out as a podcast too, because I'm sure there's lots of interesting chat that everybody would enjoy about this. Merry Christmas, Alex. You've just had a little boy.
A little boy.
Okay,
yeah,
so
just over a week old.
The sleepless nights will be fantastic. Yeah. Great. Listen, thanks very much, guys. Take care. We'll speak to you next week. There will be another Kick of the Balearics podcast talking away from Real Mallorca between me and Martin a little bit later on in the week. We obviously are going to talk about Cardassio against Atletico Madrid, Udi Ibiza's games in Copa del Rey tonight, of course, and how they got on last week. So we'll talk then. In the meantime, take care, everybody, and thanks very much for joining us.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.